Welcome everyone, Questini here with the discussion about one of the most overhyped and overrated legendary lords in all of Total War Warhammer 3. And that is, of course, Mr. Skarbrand over here. Skarbrand is considered a powerful legendary lord by the standards of Warhammer 3. I admit that I've always struggled to understand why. You might look at this campaign and think, well, I'm rich, I've achieved a short campaign victory condition, and I'm marching directly on Ulf 1, though I'll certainly use Alifanar as a speed bump along the way in order to get there faster. That is absolutely going to be the case. You can win a campaign quickly as Skarbrand, and I'll be blunt, the most infuriating comments I ever get on my channel is like, oh, you just don't know how to play it. I have played more Warhammer 3 than the vast majority of people out there have ever achieved. I do know how to play Warhammer 3. In fact, I am playing Warhammer 3 right now. I have completed campaigns as Skarbrand, on Legendary I might add, but I still think he is very overhyped. It is not any indication of a player's personal skill, by the way, with a legendary lord or character is indicative of absolutely nothing. And I also think that just because you like a campaign doesn't mean that is good. For instance, I like Kislev. Kislev is still a pile of trash for every legendary lords, but I still like them. Personal preference, just something that appeals to me. Also, I just like the casualty replenishment and having a lot of range units available in the roster in very durable melee infantry. That's the reason I like Kislev. Also, Ice Magic and Bear Riders. There's something funny about the Bear Riders, but Kislev is still crap. So why is Skarbrand powerful, but also overhyped? Well, how does Skarbrand work? His faction effects are simple. He can replenish them for a territory. He suffers relationship with coordinate factions, not that there's many of those running around. He gets a 15% campaign movement range, and in terms of lord effects, he gets campaign movement range after winning a battle, plus 25%, 10% in his special skill line, an additional 15%, you get the notion. Then he also has the Skull Throne, which gives him an additional 15% after raising a settlement. This is what makes Skarbrand powerful. And then he has the Blood Host mechanic. When you raise a settlement, you have the ability of raising a Blood Host. It's supposed to be a temporary arm, but does cost upkeep. The Blood Hosts are a gimmick, or I think Creative Assembly designed them as a gimmick, but they've kind of ended up being a very crucial part of Skarbrand's campaign mechanics. Because Skarbrand has a non-existent economy. There are races and lords in this game that don't have an economy. We can look at the Beastmen, for instance. They don't really operate on an economic model the same way everyone else does. Instead, they just use money for buildings and certain items. That's how the Beastmen work. But they don't generate money except through sacking and looting. Skarbrand, on the other hand, in the worst possible way of both worlds, he has a lot of upkeep in his faction and generates very little money. And in this case, this is, by the way, a good example that, yes, I took Caracade Peaks with secondary army. I just want to vassalize Queek in this campaign. Skarbrand pays upkeep for his armies. And even though you have a significant upkeep benefit through the bloodletting mechanic, it is still going to be a problem that you are going to deal with. And also, you can't just take territory. You have to pay skulls to take a territory, 2,500 to be specific. So you have every incentive to raise the settlement to the ground, or sack it, wait a turn, then raise it. The reason you'd want to sack and raise it is because while it will slow down your progress, it will also mean that you gain a lot more money in your campaign. Because if you just raise the settlement, you're getting far less. Skarbrand does have a significant amount of income from sacking settlements. Yes, shockingly enough. Whereas you get very little for raising them. Maybe he should get a lot of money from raising settlements, just to keep up with the intent behind the campaign. Maybe that's just my particular perspective on that subject. Now, he's supposed to use the Blood Host, but the Blood Hosts cost money, and they don't replenish. So there's supposed to be a temporary army to supplement your forces. That's how the cults work for Nakari. Nakari's cultist armies, that's precisely how they work. A temporary army that doesn't cost you anything, but that does take damage over time. That's not how Creative Assembly did Skarbrand. That's the one thing I dislike to begin with. You have a faction where maintaining a lot of armies is difficult because the economic potential just flat out isn't there. If you're thinking you're going to play a Skarbrand campaign and generate a lot of money from settlements, no, your income is pathetic. One of the most pathetic incomes in the entire game. You are reliant on looting and sacking settlements, and you are advised to do so as quickly as possible. But the armies you have, the unit recruitment that you have, is very expensive. How expensive, you might ask? Well, let me just recruit a lord over here and I'll give you an idea. A basic Chaos Warrior of Khorne is 1700 in a settlement I own. But keep in mind something here, something that is also going to be important to keep in mind. You are going to operate in territory you don't own. You, if you're playing Skarbrand, are going to be using global recruitment. Problem with that is that's a lot more expensive to do it than normal recruitment. Yes, you can reduce global recruitment duration, that is true, and Skarbrand does have a minus 35% recruitment cost when an enemy in race territory, but he's a one pony trick. He has one powerful army, the Blood Hosts, and that benefit from gaining movement points after a battle. To be quite blunt, when Tarax was introduced in Warhammer 2, Tarax was amazing. Skarbrand is pathetic from my perspective and comparison. He shouldn't be. He should be a really, really scary bastard. He can be. But he is such a huge disappointment to play. And he's also very one-dimensional to play as well. Because you start over here in the Badlands, you make a circle around this territory, sacking as you go, until you get the cult over here in this territory. Yes, it's always going to be around here because there's a Khorne faction here. We're going to get the Khorne cult. And then once you get that, you teleport there to go deal with Nakari because that's one of your campaign objectives. You do that, you win the campaign, you obliterate everything in your path. Another problem, a further issue in all of this is, well, the auto-resolve. You have good replenishment, and you do have units like Chaos Warriors of Khorne, or the variants with dual weapons and all that, that do have a good amount of armor, so they won't take a lot of damage in auto-resolve. Problem is, you're going to be fighting a lot of battles per turn, potentially, far more so than many other factions. So if you try and auto-resolve your way through it, it's going to end up in a disaster. And also because blood hosts don't replenish, and you might have a blood host joining the fight or initiating the fight so you can get the blood lighting up to keep them active for longer, you're going to end up in a situation where you have incredibly powerful armies that will sweep all before them because you're outpacing the AI's recruitment, you're moving so fast the AI can't keep up, but you're forced to fight every single manual battle, or the vast majority of them. Sure, you can auto-resolve your way through it, and it does work in a campaign, but it also ends up being particularly crap. Having battle after battle after battle that you know you will win. You know you are going to sweep your opposition aside, but you still have to fight them. Some people may like that. I think that's an incredibly crappy system. If the entire purpose of the campaign, of the way the campaign is working, is that you will win every battle, but you have to fight them anyway, that is utter dog shit, as I see it. That's one of the things I really detest about Skarbrand. Yes, there are mods that can help with this, but we're talking about the vanilla experience, not the modded experience. Incidentally, if you can make the situation significantly better if you use an auto-resolve mod, as I've talked in certain videos. But that doesn't mean the underlying race still isn't bad. You have a race that doesn't have an economy, so ergo limited armies, especially with the very high recruitment costs, and also the cost of the blood hosts. If you try and recruit multiple armies as Skarbrand, you'll be going bankrupt very quickly, until you get to a point where you have like 100k in the bank, and then you can afford it. But before that, it is a tricky proposition. So What's the problem with that? You have the blood hosts. Well, the blood hosts are spawned by your main army, so they're always going to be in that area of the main army. Do you know what you lose with that? Flexibility. Because I don't give a shit how many battles Skarbrand can win per turn, because he's just one army. The blood hosts don't have the same kind of movement range that he does. So he's always leading the charge, taking settlement after settlement after settlement. But that is a very one-dimensional campaign. Do you know who does better? The Greenskins do better. Yes. The reason the Greenskins do better, Grimgor, Grom, Azag, Warzag, the reason they end up doing significantly better in a campaign, and the reason they achieve potentially far more than this overhyped lizard, is because the Greenskins don't just operate with one army, even though Grimgor is as scary as they come with his one army. It's the fact that the Greenskins operate many armies in a campaign. That's faction power, which is something that I want to drive into some thick skulls. The power that comes in a campaign doesn't come from just having one army. It's coming from having numerous armies. It's capturing a vast swath of territory and throwing an entire stack of troops on the enemy. Basically, 20 armies of 20 units each. That's power. Not this crap. Oh, you might have 20 blood hosts. Okay, blood hosts are not real armies. Like, consider this situation. Hellbrand has 2 entire armies, almost free. Malekith has 3 armies, almost 3 full armies. And that's under the control of the AI. Yes, this is on Legendary, I understand that. But what if I told you that this kind of situation, what Malekith has, is actually something you, as the player, when you're controlling the Dark Elves, you can do. Now, I have 2 armies over here as Skarbrand, and I'm going bankrupt. I may be able to recruit them, but point is, doing so is tricky. Very tricky. And you can achieve campaign success very quickly in other campaigns, very decisively in other campaigns, without being cuffed by a crap recruitment system, a crap economy, and a gimmicky campaign system. It's a gimmick. That's all it is, really. Like, I want to make this point. Nakari is an interesting campaign to play because Nakari has choices and consequences for those choices as you're trying to desperately hold off the waves and waves of Wolfwan and trying to vassalize them. You can technically vassalize a Skarbrand because you can. It is an option. You want to solve your economic issues, one of the ways to do it is potentially vassalizing someone like Queek, right? Who is favorable towards you. Problem with that is that, well, to put it simply, when taking territory cost skulls, which end up being a rare resource, it's trickier to get the territory that you need. Also, because you constantly need to sack settlements to maintain your economy in a campaign, surprise, 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 you're going to capture settlements at a lower level, which the AI will value less in trade agreements, which means you're far less likely to be able to vassalize a faction in a campaign. So while vassalization is available as a diplomatic option for Skarbrand, it is substantially less powerful than it is for, say, Nakari or others, because there are many others. And finally, there's just a practical point I have an issue with Skarbrand. His army is dull. Like, forget the power of it, forget everything I've said so far. Playing Skarbrand is incredibly fucking dull. Because you're playing with a one-dimensional army. You don't have the warband upgrade system. This is a mod that I have. You can make things more interesting with that, but you're not going to be able to afford Chosen in this campaign, to put it mildly. Problem is, because you have so few settlements, and while you do have global recruitment, but because you have so few settlements, and your economy is in the gutter, chances of you actually using any kind of real armor variety are very limited. There's an incredible unit roster for Khorne available. Things like skull cannons, bloodletters, skull crushers, rather. There's some really, really nice stuff over here that you never, ever use in a Skarbrand campaign. You look at Legend of Total War, you look at this playthrough, this is the army you're going for. Some bloodletters, cast warriors of Khorne, maybe some regiments are renowned, 1 Cultist of Khorne, and a Blood Reaper. And by the way, this campaign is slow by the standards of Skarbrand. I just wasn't willing to punish myself for it in order to do this in 10 turns, because it is possible. It is possible to achieve actually more than this in 10 turns. It just isn't really particularly something I'm fond of. This is the one-dimensional army of Skarbrand. You have a faction, a race that has a great unit variety that can be so much fun, so interesting, and you hamstring it in so many ways. And finally, why the fuck would you play Skarbrand when Valkia is in the game? Who is significantly better as a Legendary Lord than every singular way. She has great armor variety. She is part of a better race. She is a better faction. She's a better Legendary Lord. She might not be winning 1v1 duels with Skarbrand, though I wouldn't necessarily put my money on Skarbrand defeating Valkia to begin with. People might mock Valkia, but she's pretty damn scary in a battle. Don't underestimate the power she has, because yeah, she's got some really pretty powerful stuff over there with her items in particular. But why would you do that? Valkia is flat out better in every single way. You want to play a coordinate faction? Count Champions of Chaos is out there and it's available. And Valkia is a really great Legendary Lord for it. Or you could play Taurox. Same principles of Skarbrand, except significantly better campaign dynamics. Though Beastmen are not necessarily great in certain ways, I'd rather take a Beastman campaign than this rubbish. Beastman campaigns can be more interesting. They can offer a better variety of units. They can offer a better variety of where you're going. Skarbrand, you are doing the Badlands Circle, as I would call it, and then invading Wolf 1. And you do it in every campaign. It never changes. It never plays out differently. You never use any kind of army. You never expand beyond maybe 2 armies at most. And even then, 2 armies, you're kind of pushing it. You're going to go bankrupt with 2 armies. And that second army is never going to be as powerful as your main army. That's the thing that really holds you back. Getting a second army in a campaign as Skarbrand is an enormous investment in a campaign, but it doesn't matter because it's just 1 army. You want to know the trick to beating Legendary as many campaigns? You don't get 2 armies in the campaign. You get 10 armies in the campaign. You outpace the AI so that if they bring 6 stacks, you bring 10 stacks to a fight. If they throw Brimgore against you, you've got 3 stacks to throw against him. If it ever comes down to a simple 1v1 fight against AI, that's a great situation, but many times in a campaign, as I'm sure many people are aware that have played this series for a long time, the AI doesn't fight fair. They won't bring 1 army. They'll bring 4 armies to a fight. Now, Skarbrand might win that battle himself. His other armies, his secondary, tertiary armies, will not. Because they're nowhere near as powerful as he is. It's a gimmick. It's a cheap-ass campaign that was never that particularly great. Some people like it because of Skulls for the Skull Throne, but there are better campaigns within that style, within the actual game. You want to play a campaign where you're doing the world tour? Play fucking Oxyatl. You want to play a campaign with a lot of movement range? Taurox and Valkia are out there. Significantly better as Legendary Lords, significantly better races, significantly better factions. Skarbrand is trash. Now, he's not weak. I wish to stress this out. And I wish for people to stop being asinine about this to understand. Something can be poorly designed even if it has a lot of power. Skarbrand does have a lot of power. I dispute the argument that he's anywhere near as powerful as some certain Legendary Lords in the game, but he certainly is a top-tier Legendary Lord. If I had to pick between Be'lakor and Skarbrand, yeah, Be'lakor wins hands down. That's not a contest. If I had to pick between Draika and Skarbrand, Draika wins hands down. There's no discussion in my mind. He's not S tier from strength level, but he is A tier. He's up there. But in terms of fun factor, in terms of campaign variety, in terms of faction design, he is F tier easily. He's not Nurgle. You will not hate your life playing this campaign as much as Nurgle, or Kairos, or the Ogres. But he's in the dangerous spot. And I mention all of this. You might wonder why make a point of all of this. Because, well, we can't expect Great Assembly at one point to make another Khorne campaign. If it's anything like Skarbrand, it's going to be another piece of trash. Because this is one of the things we need to point out. which has a change. The Changeling is a crap campaign, because they fixed none of the underlying issues of Siege. They made a unique campaign, but it ended up being dull as dirt. I wonder what they're going to do in Nurgle. Costin signing out. Stay tuned for more. If you enjoyed my content, consider checking out my Patreon and PayPal. See you next time.